me get this straight. Put the lime in the coconut.
So, Dr. Tammy, why call it the Naked Doctor?
Well, it's the naked truth about health, wellness, and lifestyle, but it's also fun not to wear clothes in the studio.
Welcome back to Naked Doctor. I'm Dr. Tammy.
And this is Chrissy.
And we have a wonderful show today for you. We are so excited. We have in the studio the famous, amazing Dr. Bryan Post.
Yes.
Who's also my husband.
Just happens to be.
The coolest
It's really
thing
handy.
Ever.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's kind of like, oh, your husband's on the show. But, like, this guy
it's
is
like, oh, your husband's on the show.
World famous.
Right,
Yeah. And in the circles that he has revolutionarized parenting, he's a god and a guru, and I am his biggest fan. So
excellent.
Welcome, Bryan. Thank you for being here on the show today.
Thank you. Glad to be here. My honor and pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Awesome.
So, you know, the first thing that comes to mind is that I have this man in my house every single day. So
yes.
I have the benefit of parenting, but there are so many parents out there who are just living the nightmare of, you know, trying to do the best they can and feeling completely overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And I get parents all the time who come as patients to the practice who are just really stressed out, and you know, it's just a hard place to be. And, you know, that's one of the things that you've taught me, Bryan, is you have to calm your own stress first. And I think stress is so misunderstood, and it has the power to transform so much in parenting.
Well, absolutely. Stress is probably one of the most underestimated experiences that we have on a day-to-day basis. And we have spent so many times and so many generations and decades of people talking about, oh, I'm so stressed out, or I'm stressed, or that stresses me out. And so we've just devalued it. And so we don't really comprehend in a moment-to-moment, day-to-day basis just how impactful it is on our brains, our bodies, our relationships, our health, just everything that we do. And especially when it comes to parenting. I mean, stress is the fundamental challenge to all parenting relationships. So when it comes to behaviors and when it comes to connecting with your child, it all starts at the level of stress. And if you are unaware or incapable of calming your own stress, which I call regulating, then it is really hard to be in relationship. And you two ladies will have to interrupt me because I'll just start.
No, that's awesome. We're here to we get plenty of talking time.
We talk
Don't worry about that.
So our cells we have trillions of cells in our body, and every cell in our body has consciousness. And so every cell communicates to every other cell in the body. The moment you become stressed, your amygdala is your stress receptor in your brain. It's also your fear receptor in your brain. Your amygdala communicates to the cells in your body, and those cells in your body constrict into survival. That is the essence of stress. Our bodies know two states. We know a surviving state, which is being constricted, and we know a thriving state, which is being open. That's a state akin to love. And so when your cells experience stress, they move into survival. In the state of survival, you cannot be in relationship. You cannot effectively help someone else to calm down. You can't even think clearly in the midst of survival because all you can do is try to survive. And so our society, we are so survival oriented. I mean, we go to work, we stress about paying the bills, we stress about cooking dinner, we stress about cleaning the house, we stress about our children's behaviors at school, we stress about the traffic, we stress about family, friends. So we're always stressed and we're always in survival. And then we wonder why our relationships with our children suffer the way they do, and there's so many challenges.
Yes. Now, what I've run into too is people that are there's two things. One, they're stress junkies, so they seem to view that as some sort of, I'm not being successful, I'm not working towards what I want unless I am stressed. So I have worked around people that always questioned other people that if you're not stressed out enough, you're not working hard enough. You're not doing this right if you're not stressed. How did that get flipped on its head like that?
Well, it's interesting when you think about that because we associate oftentimes success with hard work. So we talk about you have to work hard to be successful, which is true. You do have to work hard to be successful, but you don't have to be stressed out of your mind while you're working hard. And so
Yeah.
that's the part of really enjoying what you do, really spending the time focusing, thinking about the things you're doing as you're putting the work and the effort into it. But when you're completely stressed out, and there's a scientific finding that says in times of stress, our thinking is confused and distorted and our short-term memory is suppressed. So when you're stressed out, you're not making the best decisions. You're not thinking long-term. You're not making the best choices, for your work and then ultimately for your health and everything else. You think about these people who work, 18-hour days and they eat bad food and they don't exercise. And then the flip side of that is it damages their health. And so they're creating perhaps all this success in business because they're spending all this time working so hard, but then they're doing all this damage to their health or to their relationships.
Yeah. So really, how are you winning in that situation?
And I love it when you combine the nerdy science, with the touchy-feely stuff that we talk about sometimes. Because you were talking last week on the show about, when you kind of found yourself in transition between jobs, you just decided, I'm just going to relax and enjoy this time.
Yes. And once I removed that stress, which was all self-inflicted, the rest of my experience, I think that's how I want to say it, was able to smooth out, and I was able to move and transition easily into the next step for myself. So I know that's one of those weird things. It's important to talk about the physical aspects because we do want people to be healthy, but it extends to so much more than that. I think that's what's fascinating.
Spiritual, emotional.
Yeah.
And it's like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you
Yeah.
slow down and breathe, or do you, so.
And when it comes to relationships with kids, this is where we have the opportunity to teach them their generation does not have to be like this.
And Dr. Tammy makes a good point, and I want to emphasize that a lot of times we believe that slowing down and breathing, we correlate that to getting less done. So if I say, well, you need to slow down and breathe, the person who is really type A, really go, they hear that and they're like, immediately, I'm going to get less done if I slow down and I breathe. But really, you're going to get more done because it's not really slowing down that you're doing. It's just slowing down your thoughts. So your body doesn't necessarily have to slow down, but your thoughts slow down. Your breathing slows down. You get more clear on what it is that you want to do and what you want to try to accomplish. So slowing down and breathing doesn't mean physically getting less done. It just means being more mindful and present in the moment of what you're doing.
Right. So in a sense, you're way more effective that way.
Way
than you
more
would be
effective
if
because
you were
your
just-
thinking's more effective.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And that's one of the things you teach parents is just to slow down and breathe. And can you talk a little bit about the breathing technique? And
Well, the significance of that goes back to stress. When parents experience a negative behavior from their child, what that does is it triggers their fear receptor. So as soon as you see your child misbehaving, you become stressed. So first of all, your child is stressed because they're misbehaving. Anytime a child is misbehaving or acting in a behavior that's not normal, whatever you want to call it, it's because they're stressed. So they've gone outside their window of tolerance. Well, the first thing the brain does, our brains are always looking for a threat. As soon as we see the threat, we react to the threat. And what the reaction does is it causes us to quickly move into survival, and then it causes us to quickly want to get rid of the threat. So it goes back to fight, flight, or freeze. So we either want to fight the threat, or we want to run from the threat, or we just freeze. And we always freeze first, and then we determine whether we're going to fight or we're going to flee. And so when a parent is having an interaction with their child, and their child's stressed out, and the parent gets stressed out, if they start moving automatically, they're reacting. And reacting is all emotional, and there's no thought involved in it. It's automated. It's like you just go into autopilot. And that's why a lot of times you end up saying the same things you've always said, doing the same things you always do, and you keep getting the same results over and over and over again because there's no thought, there's no
or sounding like your parent.
Yeah, I know. Oh my, that's when I thought that recording. But all of a sudden, you're like, my mom used to say this, and I'm done.
Well, let me speak to that, because what happens is your amygdala, when it turns on stress, it actually drops into your brainstem. Your brainstem is where all of your memories are stored, all of them. So every memory you've had, pre-verbal memory and forward, is all stored in your brainstem. So all these messages and stories that you heard growing up, well, your amygdala turns on stress, and stress, depending on the level of stress, the intensity of the stress, it goes deeper into the brainstem, and the deeper it goes into the brainstem, the more it activates those memories. So when those memories get activated, then that's where those, oh my gosh, I sound just like my dad.
Yeah, and it's
sounded.
going to go back to a similar situation too. So if you were getting yelled at when you were a kid, and now you find yourself as the parent yelling, that's where your brain's going to go, and that stuff's going to come right out of your mouth. Oh my gosh, I never really thought of it that way.
And all your fears, like we were talking last week about, like you play the chord on the
And then once
everything
that
else
string is
resonates
strummed,
it's,
it all
it's
goes
resonating.
that way.
Every fear-based event that you've ever had surrounding that emotion
that you're aware of, and the ones that you're not aware of.
And I was just thinking as you were saying that, my kid never misbehaves, so this doesn't really apply to me. And I'm like, if we'd had this conversation like 5 years ago before I met you, I'd have been like, oh my gosh, I am the worst mother ever. I have the worst kid. I am so stressed out. I mean, I was blaming it. We had gone to all these doctors, and we had all these diagnoses, and we had PDD and ADHD and autistic, and we had all these diagnoses, and now I'm just like, I just got a normal kid, and I really
fantastic.
am able. I mean, and sure, like he still has his little meltdowns, but I'm really able to look at it and say, wow, he's reached his window of tolerance. We need to do something different.
Yeah.
We're fishing, and he gets stressed and starts screaming. I don't see it as bad behavior anymore. I just see it, wow, he's really reached his window. We need to go get some food, or we need to switch gears. And so I just, I know so many parents feel so stuck out there, and it's just,
Well, I think I don't know, everyone seems to have advice, whether it's warranted or not. Everyone seems to be really willing to give you their opinion on how your child behaves. And it's like, I need to find these answers for myself. And Bryan, I think you have so much insight there. That's fantastic.
They're saying it's time for a little commercial break, so we're going to wrap up just a second. We'll be right back with Bryan Post, and we're going to talk more about parenting and stress and all that good stuff. Welcome back to The Naked Doctor. I'm Dr. Tammy.
And this is Chrissy.
And we have Bryan Post in the studio today. He is a world-renowned family therapist. When I first was getting to know him, he corrected me oftentimes and said, I'm a parent therapist, not a child therapist. I'm like, can't you fix my kid?
Let's go to the root of the problem. It really does make more sense.
Yeah, I gave up working with kids a long time ago. And I remember vividly when I had my first clinic, I had a therapist, and I was in the front office, and I saw my therapist walking through the office, and he had this little 3-year-old following behind him. And I thought, what is he gonna do with that 3-year-old that's gonna make any difference?
Yeah.
It's just, and so I just saw it as a total waste of time. And there are a lot of therapists out there, play therapists, and people who, therapists who work just exclusively with kids. And they I believe they bring to the table some really good resources and some really good support for children. But I see family dynamics. I don't see I believe the moment we start labeling a child in a family, we're scapegoating the child. And so in order to truly have impact in the family and ultimately on the child, you have to work with all the family dynamics, and you have to start with the parents because they set the tone in the whole environment. So if you don't spend that time helping mom and dad or mom or dad or grandma or grandpa understand themselves and their own reactions to behaviors, you're just shooting in the dark.
Yeah, that makes so much sense because, by the way, you were here way before the child was. Right. So,
and you're the adult, you're the mature one that has to
you're the
set
one
the
that
tone.
Technically has a little more control over your behavior.
Well, and adult dysfunction runs, like you said, years and years and years before the child's dysfunction comes along. So it's not like you have an 8-year-old and you have this 40-year-old parent who's just perfect and has no issues.
Right.
Well, if you got an 8-year-old with issues, I guarantee you within 40 years you've got a lot of issues.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of baggage to be carrying. And you really can't fault a child for, you know what I mean? You don't know. Well, okay, now see, when someone says, now how do you respond to this? When someone says it just seems like he knows how to push my buttons. Like, it just seems like my child seems to know those things that get that kind of reaction from me.
If you didn't have buttons to be pushed, he wouldn't be able to push those buttons. And so you have to look at, it's not about the fact that he's pushing the buttons, because if it wasn't him pushing it, it'd be someone else.
Yeah.
If you want to get to the real crux of it, you got to look at what's underneath the button that's being pushed. What is it? When the button gets pushed, what is that about? Because you can eliminate people all day long. I mean, you can, send your child to school and not have to have that button pushed for that period of time, but you're going to go to school and somebody else is going to push that button. And when your child stops pushing that button, your husband's going to push that button, or your other child's going to push that button. And so, I mean, we
The problem is the button. It's
right.
not the person
It's
pushing
not the
it.
person, it's the button.
Got it.
That's powerful. And you can even equate that in business. I mean, how many people are at work going, gosh, my boss just pushes my buttons all day long.
Yeah.
You really need to look at your buttons.
Maybe we need to get rid of those buttons.
Well, and that goes back to, fundamentally, we're not looking at blame. We live in a real blame-focused, fault-placing society.
Yes.
And that is a byproduct of being reactive and being scared, rather than being willing to take responsibility. When we're willing to take responsibility for our button being pushed, when we're willing to take responsibility for our emotions, our roles, our behaviors, our thoughts, our actions, then it's no longer about you pushing my button. It's about my responsibility for what I feel and what I think and what I do. And that's just a completely different way of living your life, but that's simple. It's not easy, because it requires you to have to be mindful and present in the moment and in relationships, and have to look at stuff that you'd rather not look at stuff, and have to focus on changing stuff about you that you'd just, quite frankly, rather not change.
Well, it's habits. These are
Absolutely.
thought habits.
It's habits, conditioning, and that is difficult stuff.
Yeah.
What is it you just said this morning? Everybody wants change, but nobody wants to change.
Yeah, I saw a little cartoon.
Yes. Goodness sakes. Everybody wants to hear. We were talking about that with weight loss. Oh, you've lost some weight. Really? What have you been doing? This is well, I've been working really hard, and I've been making. Oh, I don't want that. I want you to tell me there's like a patch or a pill or something. Never mind. It's like, so your family's doing so well. You're all so relaxed. Well, I take time to de-stress, and I'm responsible for my own feelings. They're walking away at that point. Like,
Good for you.
whatever. I thought maybe you got a maid. I don't. Oh, this is awesome. So how do you usually find families that are in need? How have you in the past?
Mostly just through my website, postinstitute.com, and word of mouth. Families. I've been in this field for 20 years, so it's, I've been around and written and co-written 9 books and 27 different audio and video programs, and lectured to over 100,000 people. So
wow, that's fantastic.
All over the world.
So you've seen some things.
I've seen as bad as you're gonna see.
Yeah, yeah. And do you tend to see that once you dig a little bit deeper, this is the parents' childhood experience, and they learned from their parents, and
like I said, families are an interrelated dynamic of individuals. So, I work a lot with adopted and foster kids. So they bring their own experiences to a family. And what happens is their experiences clash with the experiences of mom, or clash with the experiences of dad. And there's no one place to that you can just place blame. It ultimately is always going to come back to, and I always say this to parents, this isn't about you causing anything. This isn't about your fault. This is all about your willingness to take responsibility, to do something different, to create new environments and new relationships. That's all it comes down to. It's not about what you did or didn't do 5 years ago, or what you guys did 10 years ago, or what happened to you 20 or 30 years ago. It's all about looking at what's showing up today, what's showing up in this moment, and how is this shifting and changing the dynamics of your family in a way that you want to change it. I had a lady sent me a message the other day, and I get these messages randomly, and I don't do a lot anymore working with families, but she said, our son is tearing our family apart, and we've done this therapy, and now they're saying it's probably an attachment disorder or whatever. We feel like we're losing. And so my first response back was, how old is he? Well, he's 8 years old. You got plenty of time.
Yeah.
You got plenty of time. So the first thing I want you to do is just calm down. You got plenty of time. Let's get you some educational resources. Let me get you connected to a coach, someone who can help you. But you've got plenty of time, and that's what fear does to us.
Yeah.
Fear makes us react from the past, obsess about the future, but it takes you out of the present. And the present is all that you have. And if you're not in the present, if you're not in this moment, then you're not in a space of love. You're in a space of stress and fear. And within stress and fear, all you can think about is fixing it. That's all fear says. Fear says fix it. Fear says remove the threat. Fear says make that behavior go away, control it, suppress it, whatever you got to do. Love says create the environment and the relationships to allow it to fix itself.
Yeah.
So if I can create an environment and relationships that are based in love and understanding and support and faith and trust, then I can create an environment that's going to allow my child to grow up and be more reflective and more understanding. And that's, I'm looking at a long-term thing with my child. I'm not looking at I don't need you to start behaving like you're supposed to today and everything's going to be okay. I'm looking at what can I do to secure our relationship in a way that I can influence you throughout the rest of your life, and then influence my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and how can I change the generations of my family, not just how can I control your behavior today.
Yeah.
And when you look at families who have kids who are well behaved, and you look at families who don't, you see that those families who have kids who are well behaved are more invested in the relationship with those kids. They're showing up with those kids. Yeah. It's the parents who just kind of show up after work stressed out, who yell and kind of have that stress space. Like they start like running those tapes that their parents would have said, pick up your room or do your homework. And they're just, they're not really in the relationship.
And what I want to do is I want to boil that down to, it's very simple science. And I feel like it removes some of the judgmentality of it when you realize that it's just science. When a parent invests a significant amount of time, not even a significant, but just a reasonable amount of time of present attention, and they've been there and they're there when their child is injured and when their child is upset, and they're there and they're providing that soothing, what they're doing at the most basic level is they're teaching their child oxytocin. So the oxytocin response, oxytocin is your brain's anti-stress hormone. So you have cortisol and you have adrenaline, which are your primary stress hormones. But the significance is that cortisol and adrenaline are natural. Oxytocin is a learned hormone in your brain. So when you have parents who are showing up in that manner, what they're doing is they're teaching you regularly, repetitively, how to release oxytocin in the midst of stress. Oxytocin is also referred to as the love hormone. It's the hormone which makes love possible. And when kids grow up, having parents who are supportive and nurturing and attuned and attentive and present, then they grow up releasing oxytocin and learning oxytocin, so that when they go out into the world and they encounter stressful situations, they may get upset, they may have challenges, but their brain knows how to turn on oxytocin in the presence of stress, therefore calming themselves down, therefore making them look more well behaved than say a child who doesn't, a child who isn't getting that attentiveness, that nurturing, that connection that they need. Their brain doesn't, when they're releasing cortisol, their brain's not turning on to release oxytocin. So what they do is they end up staying stressed out longer, and that stress drives their behavior. So I pioneered the stress model 20 years ago, and the stress model says, and I call it a theory of human behavior, not just child behavior. It says all behavior arises from a state of stress. All behavior, good or bad. And it's between the behavior and the stress, there's a primary emotion, and that's love or fear. There are only two primary emotions, love and fear. It's through the expression, the processing, and the understanding of the fear that we can calm the stress and diminish the behavior. So probably one of the most breakthrough things in all of my professional career is when I understood that all negative behavior arises from stress. If I understand that all negative behavior arises from stress, and in between behavior and stress is the presence of love and fear, and if it's stress, it's fear, which is then driving the negative behavior, all I've got to do is first calm my own stress and my own fear, and then number two, all I have to do is work on calming your stress and your fear. If I'll fundamentally work on calming your stress and your fear, your negative behavior will diminish. It is that simple. It doesn't have to get any more complicated than that. Doesn't matter what the diagnosis is, whether it's ADHD, BPD, ABCDEFG, it doesn't matter. If I see your negative behavior as stress and I see myself as having a stress and a fear reaction to it, and if I can calm that down, move into a space of love, and then help you calm your stress and your fear, negative behavior goes away.
See, that's fantastic. I want to use that in everything. I want to, and there have been those people, because I've worked with children before in like childcare settings, who would behave one way with me because I kept my room very structured. I was able to give everybody proper attention. I, addressed things as they came up. And the moment their parents would walk in the door, it was a different child. And I could see, because I would think to myself, because they would be going, oh, Jeffrey has so many problems. Jeffrey never sleeps. Jeffrey was swinging from his closet rod last night. That's a real story. And I'm like, well, Jeffrey's awesome with me. So in my mind, I'm like, Jeffrey's got the tools. Jeffrey's got the ability to behave. It's clearly his environment when he's and so I understand that if he's getting those stress signals from the parents, that behavior is going to be completely different than from the environment that he was comfortable in during the day.
Absolutely.
Wow.
They're saying it's time for a little commercial break, so we're going to take a little break, and we'll be right back with Bryan Post and the Naked Doctor.
Yes.
Welcome back to the Naked Doctor. I'm Dr. Tammy.
And this is Chrissy.
And we have the amazing Bryan Post in the studio this morning.
Fascinating stuff.
And I just, we were talking on break, just some interesting stuff, and I want to get right into teenagers, which he so calmly said, it's all the same. I got this.
I don't know.
But it was so interesting because I just want to share that our son is 11, and he's had a really, I don't know if I call it stressed week, but he's kind of had these little heightened behaviors and just really triggered really easily. We've tried to go fishing a couple of times, just kind of meltdowns. And, Bryan said he's going through a growth phase. And like literally we took him into the pantry and at 3 inches. And I'm like, that is so interesting. So I think that's something that parents don't think about too.
Yeah.
The growth process itself in children is stressful to their bodies. And so if they're going through a phase where you're thinking, what's the deal? That might be something that you might want to ask.
Metamorphosis that they're going through. That's achiness and
and you mentioned
hormones.
Teenage boys, so there's hormones and there's all these things changing. So I'm going to hand it back to you guys. But that was just a really interesting awareness for me.
Yes. So is it different when... Okay, because I have a theory, Bryan, and then you can kind of, because I've seen other families go through this. There'll be a parent who comes to work and just complaining about this teenager. Oh my gosh, it's out of control. This is horrible. It's so disrespectful. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I think that was probably established much younger in them. This is not something that suddenly comes up. You can't expect to not have a connection to your child, and then you see them flare up as a rowdy teenager and think, oh no, now I need to make that connection. In my mind, I'm like, you probably should have gone back and done that work earlier when they were younger.
Yeah, with adolescents, one of the things that's really important for us to keep in mind is that the adolescent brain is actually on fire. So it is pruning away everything it hasn't used. So you have an abundance of hormones, you have abundance of chemical interactions going on in their brain, you have their growth that's affecting their bones and their structures and everything. But what oftentimes happens in relationship to what you're saying, Chrissy, is that we spend a lot of time, because we're so fearful as parents, we spend a lot of time while our children are young controlling them. So we spend a lot of time controlling them, trying to change their behaviors, telling them you're going to do it my way. And all the time we're doing that, we're actually diminishing our relationship. Mm-hmm. So by the time they hit adolescence, the time where now they're beginning to develop their own brain and their own thought processes and their own independence, their own peer network that's much more supportive and understanding, all of a sudden they start to rebel. Mm-hmm. So then teenage rebellion sets in, and then the parents go, oh my gosh, what's happening? You've been planting those seeds all along. If you had focused on relationship and influence while they were young, you'd still have relationship and influence when they go through this really tough stage of adolescence. And so there's a couple of things in that dynamic that happen and need to happen to repair that. is number one, we have to stop looking at adolescence and you have to stop looking at your 15-year-old as 15, because emotionally they're not 15, especially when they're going through all the brain development. A lot of times they're regressing back to about 5. And so if you keep treating them like 15, you're actually trying to push them to be somewhere they're not. So go back and start treating them like they're 5. Not like treating them like kids, but keeping that in mind as you are asking them to do the things that you're asking them to do, as you're interacting with them or not interacting with them, as you're setting limits, as you're allowing them to do things that you probably don't need to be allowing them to do. Start looking at them more at their emotional age, because you have your physical age, you have your emotional age, your chronological, and your cognitive age. Always go with the emotional age, because your emotional age dictates all the other states.
Right.
The other thing that parents have to really start doing at that point is working on relationship and influence. It's never too late to work on relationship and influence, which is just moving away from fear and control. And realizing, and this is the scary part about adolescence, is your child is closer to being an adult than they are to being a toddler. So you have to realize that at that point, they're going to start making decisions for themselves, and you have to respect that and understand it, not like it, not necessarily agree with it, but give them the communication and the understanding that says, look, I know you're 15 years old. You're going to make decisions I'm probably not going to agree with, but I want you to know I love you and I understand, and I'll be here when you fall flat on your face and your nose is bloody. I'm still going to love you and I'll be here. But I'd prefer you not do that.
Yeah.
But if you do, that's where we're at. And that takes a lot of faith for parents to allow. They're not even allowing, because you're not allowing a 15-year-old to do anything. A 15-year-old is going to do whatever the heck they want to do. It's only a matter of how much you can influence them in the relationship that's going to define whether they go out and do something versus whether they don't.
Right. And so laying that groundwork and having that solid foundation, and
the earlier,
boy,
the
that is
better.
It's a tough time too, because there's a part of you instinctively that wants to squeeze a little tighter. And I know that that dynamic has got to be something that nature has set up in order to be able to start that disconnection process, that if you have successfully raised a child, they're going to leave the nest and they're going to build their own life, and they're no longer going to quote unquote need you on that daily basis. And that's so hard as a mom to be facing that and to know it's soon going to be time for me to let you go from the nest. But at the same time, I still want to be your mom. I still want to have some control. That's so tough.
I used to worry that our son would grow up to be horrible. That because I had no control over his behavior, because he's just such a unique spirit and he's gonna do what he's gonna do. I had so much fear that because I couldn't control that at 2 and I couldn't control that at 7, oh my gosh, when he's a teenager, he's going to be absolutely horrible. And then as an adult, he's probably not even want to have anything to do with me. And, instead of just really looking at, I need to work on the relationship. And so I've been doing that, and it's completely shifted. I don't worry about him being a teenager at all, because I just love him, and he could do anything, and I still just love him, and through that love, the nature of our relationship has changed. So, Bryan, what would you say to parents who are maybe they're listening to this in their car driving down the street, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm hearing my kid's 15 and he's, robbing or stealing or, running with the wrong crowd, and I haven't done the work, and it's too late. And you say it's never too late, because you can look at that kid like their emotional age instead of their chronological age and start working from there. But what do you think about just having a conversation with your kid saying, oh my gosh, I really messed up. I haven't been the parent that you needed me to be, and I really want to work on the relationship. How should that shift happen?
That's a great conversation to have, and a lot of times a good starting point for parents to just say, you know what, I've been thinking and I feel like I've screwed up in a lot of ways, and I wish I had done things differently, but I haven't, and I just want you to know I'm going to start doing things differently. I'm going to start listening more and understanding more, and I just hope you'll give me another chance to do that. And kids are always willing to extend grace to their parents, because children are graceful. It's us as adults who have such a difficult time, and so parents need to extend some grace to themselves, because we spend a lot of time beating ourselves up and feeling guilty and blamed, and then we get defensive. Just extend yourself some grace. I always say to parents, the single best thing you can do is go out there and screw up with your kid just as fast as you can, because you get an opportunity to look at it and then you can see how you could do it differently. So I think starting out with an apology is a great thing. But then just taking a deep breath, taking a step back, realizing it's going to be okay. You've got the rest of your child's life. It's not just adolescence. You've got the rest of their life. And the other, when I say that there's always hope, is that the brain, the mature part of the brain, the orbital frontal cortex, which is our executive control center for social and emotional functioning. So the part of our brain responsible for how we deal in relationships and socially doesn't mature until you're 25 years old. So we're seeing with adolescents, I mean, we're looking at this doom or gloom situation, which simply is not a
They may have
reality.
10 years of
transitional
development.
Yeah, it's just a
phase,
transitional phase. They have another 10 years before that part of their brain fully develops. And that's why I believe most parent-child relationships that are severed in the teenage years actually get better once the child hits 25. All of a sudden, the child is now more mature. They can look back at their parents. They can extend them grace again. They can forgive them. They can realize that, they were just overwhelmed and asinine, and they can handle their parents' behaviors, because a lot of times by that time, the parent hasn't changed that much. It's the child who changes and is able to tolerate the parent more.
Reflect back and see the relationship for what it was.
Yeah. I remember when I kind of realized that my parents were humans.
Yeah.
I do remember that, because there's that, when you're younger, they're sort of superhuman and perfect. That's what you're thinking. And then I remember becoming a teenager and my parents were having marital problems, and that was the first time it really dawned on me that my parents aren't perfect. And I just remember that being kind of a jolt. And so I have always tried to be really honest with my kids and let them know that this is a work in progress for me too. I'm learning how to be a mom as much as as I am helping you learn how to be a good person. And we'll do this together. And one of the big changes that I've realized, because it was anytime, again, you'd see the behavior that you were considering to be, unwanted. And I would immediately get this feeling like, this is almost an attack on who I am as a parent. This is not the kid you are. I'm a better parent than that. And so the fear that was inside of me would be a reaction of, you need to stop acting that way because it's reflecting poorly on me. But when I made this shift to, you know what, baby, it's totally okay that you feel mad right now. You go ahead and feel all that mad you need to feel. I may have made a mistake. Let's sit here and talk about it, and just let my kids get whatever feeling out that they're having in that moment. Tell them it's okay to feel that way, and to let them know I'm not perfect either. I have these feelings just like you do. Sometimes I have to cry for no apparent reason. I totally get it. And once I became more inclusive that way, instead of this is an unwanted behavior that you need to stop
Controlling.
Wow, things really changed. And I'm hoping that as they're seeing my growth, they'll understand that it's okay to have these things that you have to work through, and it's okay. This is not like I have to have this perfect ideal of a person who never has feelings. That's not how that works. So I'm hoping in places, in times like that, when I feel like it's right, when my gut is telling me this is how I should be reacting, I'm hoping those things are on the right track.
Listening to your gut is always the best thing to listen to.
Yeah.
Listening to your brain, because we actually have a second brain in our gut, and you guys probably talked about this before, but our gut is the most evolved. But the problem is, and it's the most accurate. The problem is we don't listen to it because we have all the chatter up here at our big brain. So we don't listen to the brain in our gut that is our intuition.
When we can turn that volume down, we can hear what we really need to. Yeah, that's awesome. I like that.
They're saying it's time for a little break, so we're going to take a little break, and we'll be right back with the Naked Doctor. Welcome back to the Naked Doctor. I'm Dr. Tammy.
And this is Chrissy.
We're having a great conversation about relationships.
Families.
I think I would just kind of tie it up. I mean, when you say that is kind of the biggest, most important thing is just the relationship.
The relationship is the single most important thing we have. In fact, every dendrite, every synapse, every cell in our body is biologically engineered to be in relationship. So the moment we are not in relationship, we are literally in survival. And so that really does make it, it's not survival that's our core motivation, it's relationship. And that's what ensures that we all live happy, healthy, safe, and productive lives.
And that's why we have kids.
Part of the
We want
continuation
relationship.
of the species was necessary. I mean, really, if you go all the way back, it was necessary that we be able to coexist and work together and keep the family successful, the tribe successful, all of that. So it completely makes sense.
Absolutely.
It really does.
And I love that's how you're different. And I think that's why I was so attracted to you. Your model with working with families is completely different. It's the love versus fear model. It's the focus on relationship and love people, don't control them, just influence them. And, you know, I was very different in my model of getting out of traditional medical practice and treating people holistically. And so that's kind of fun that the marriage of those two things, now we're working on a company that speaks to all those things, speaks to stress and speaks to people's health and wellness and relationship and their, you know, it just kind of pulls it all together.
It's a different paradigm. Stephen Covey says a paradigm is the way in which you see the world. And making a paradigm shift is a radical process. But once you do, it's really transformative because you see the world differently. And so that's very important, especially in my work with stress and with parents, is I'm trying to help them to have a paradigm shift, to see things from a place of stress and fear and the possibility of love, as opposed to the reality of this is just stress and fear and then love doesn't exist. I think we spend a lot of times living in a state of fear that's disguised as love, and it's just not love, and we get confused. And so it has implications, like you said, across all areas, and that's with what we're doing now with Better Living RX, is helping people to experience that next paradigm of living and health.
Being able to see things from a different perspective, which is so important. Because if you're not happy where you are right now and you just continue to do things the same way you've always done them,
It's insanity.
nothing is going to change. But we have seen with all the people that we talk to and all the guests that we've had and everything that you've said, Bryan, that change is completely attainable. It's completely a possibility. But it's getting out of those thought habits. It's learning new ways of doing things, new ways of thinking about things. And I think that we're a good platform for all of that because we get to have great people on the show that give you the tools to do that.
And I think just looking in life, when you're open-minded to things, those answers come to you when you're open to them. You know, it was interesting. Just this week, I was really thinking I need to look at something differently. I was just feeling like I'd hit a wall, just really stressed out. And then I saw this picture, and it was like a crayon drawing basically on a chalkboard, and it said, "The bird doesn't worry about the branch breaking because she knows she has wings." And I'm like, that was such a paradigm shift for me in that moment, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I have been so freaking worried about the branch breaking.
Oh yeah, I have these wings. Oh, you know what? I'm going to be fine. That's exactly what it is.
And I really think that the new company that's growing out of our relationship melding together is really going to help people realize, don't worry about the branch breaking, you've got wings, you know, and to help them really look at what their wings are. So maybe their wings are the ability to take some supplements, or the ability to have someone actually listen to them, what their hormone issues are, and get those straightened out, or you know, just to start looking at stress or relationship with their family or their kids a little differently. And just healing and growing. I mean, that's kind of this new wave of what we want to think of spirituality and relationship, is that we're not stuck in that old way of thinking anymore.
No.
Which is a fearful way.
And
so I like to emphasize it is a new way, because it's the way of love. And that is the way of maximum potential and maximum healing. And all things are possible because love makes all things possible. When we are mired in fear, we are mired in limited potential.
And we've said this before. Every decision that you make from a place of fear is not going to work out
Never
well
gonna
for you.
work out well.
Never, because it's not, you're not thinking clear. I mean, there's, and we've talked about that. There's chemical reasons for that. There's spiritual reasons for that. But let me ask about this. You were talking about Better Living RX, and I want to learn a little bit more about that. So could you explain what that?
Better Living RX is a next generation healthcare company in that we are doing two things. Number one, we are certifying individuals who are health conscious, fitness minded, want to make a difference in other people's lives. We're certifying them through a process we call biooptimization based on Dr. Tammy's biobalance system, which is teaching them about detoxing the body, about balancing hormones, about proper nutrition and food sensitivity testing, exercising correctly, and then stress. And then helping and equipping those individuals to go out and make life transformation possible for people in their community. And then making that as a service available to people in the community to be able to have a maximized optimization service. It's new generation healthcare because it's not just going to your doctor to get another pill. It is about getting connected to someone who's going to walk with you along the way and optimize all the most important systems of your health.
That's fantastic. So that's like more of being able to take personal ownership, but it's not, and that's been kind of difficult because I have felt like going in to see a doctor, I get that 10 minutes with him and then I'm off, and the remainder of the time it's me just making decisions for myself. So to be able to have that hands-on kind of guidance that covers the whole spectrum of it, not just, well, I'll talk to you just about, your veins or whatever. You can tell I'm such a doctor. Let's talk about your veins. So that's cool because that's
it's
a
putting
much
all of
broader,
the pieces together.
Yeah.
It really is.
Rather than just focusing on one area.
Yeah.
Einstein said if you keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result, that's insanity. So
Yeah.
we're all about doing something different. We pull different people together. That's part of the show, and interviewing people. And you're working with one of our people that's really helped you lose a lot of weight. And just this new mindset is all about health. And it's not about just losing weight, but just becoming your maximum potential, which is
what,
beautiful.
it feels like a different kind of networking, when you do business networking, and that's great, and you have referrals and all that sort of thing, and how effective that is. But if you do that same kind of networking in the sense of, I want to learn more spiritually, I want to learn myself physically, I want to be able to spread this to the next generation that comes behind us, doesn't have to struggle the same way. Man, this is awesome. This is like a brain trust or a super team.
Oh, it is. This is so much fun. Our producer is saying it is absolutely time for the end of the show.
Okay.
It makes me very sad.
How do we contact everyone? We need to let everybody know.
My website is postinstitute.com. That's postinstitute.com, and so lots of education, free resources, and everything else there.
Parenting stuff. The first book he ever gave me was From Fear to Love. Changed my life, and it's written for foster and adopted parents, but he said just remove foster and adopted and just think parent.
Just think parents.
Changed my life immediately before I even finished reading the book. So that's like my favorite read. So you can get that on Amazon. And then Better Living RX if somebody's interested in becoming more or opportunities. Better Living RX.
There's betterlivingrx.com just for the services that we have available through our coaches, and then there's betterlivingrxbiz, BIZ.com if you're interested in being a Better Living RX coach.
Cool. And our Facebook page, The Naked Doctor Show Facebook page. Please put comments if you want to be a guest, ask questions. Go see Chrissy at Farmers Insurance this week.
Yes, come and see me. Get a quote on your insurance. I'll help you feel secure. It'll take some of that stress away.
Awesome.
That'll be nice.
Great show. Y'all have a blessed, wonderful week. Thank you for being here. Hope there was something that resonated with you that is just going to change your life this week. We love you all, and we'll see you back here on The Naked Doctor.